So we would pass up on these Merrill stags, and our hunters were just kind of scolding us, and we didn't understand till we shot one, and they congratulate us. They take it off, and then they tell us to shoot, shoot, shoot. Well, then we finally figured it out through an interpreter that we were to help the village. And so then it was a lot more exciting. We got to hunt several stags.
We melted barrels down. We killed a moose, a grizzly bear, black bear, 5 bull elk in just a couple days. It fit to help the village out. If it ran, we killed it. They'd never even seen a scope back in this area, so they used all military. Every third shot was a tracer when that's how they aimed.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Sig Sauer. SIG is a leading provider and manufacturer of firearms, electro-optics, ammunition, air guns, and suppressors. For over 250 years, Sig Sauer Inc. has evolved and thrived by blending American ingenuity, German engineering, and Swiss precision. Today, Sig Sauer is synonymous with industry-leading quality and innovation, which has made it the brand of choice amongst the U.S. military, the global defense community, law enforcement, competitive shooters, hunters, and responsible citizens. Sig Sauer is also a premier provider of elite firearms instruction and tactical training at the Sig Sauer Academy located in New Hampshire. For more information about Sig Sauer and its complete line of products, visit sigsauer.com.
Bruce, where are we right now?
We're about 50 miles upriver from Riggins, Idaho, in the on the Salmon River of No Return in the Frank Church Wilderness area.
Have you ever been here before?
This campsite, we spent about 18 years here when I was in my younger years. 74 now, and I think we started here when I was about 32, 34, and hiking back up in the high country. In the last 15, 18 years, we've come in with horses out of Warren, Idaho, up into the same area, but we're looking down on the river rather than hiking up from the river to do our elk and deer hunting.
Pat, have you ever been here before?
Yes, I've hunted several times up here with Bruce, and a little further up than this, but back when I was a little younger also.
What is it like hunting in the communist Soviet Union?
We did that, must have been that 40, 45 years ago.
It was in the 90s.
With early 90s, and with Kleinberger set that up, and we went into south central Siberia.
So this was right before the Soviet Union fell, or right after?
Right before.
Right before.
Yeah. And
so what was that like?
It was great. They set it up at a convention in Reno, and they set up a group of 8, but when it come to time to go, everybody bailed but Bruce and I.
And we weren't smart enough to do that.
And it was a experimental hunt to open hunting in Siberia. And when we got over there, it was very unique because we had an odge of people just to kind of, I think, more to protect us than anything else. And we walked Red Square. We had dinner where Kissinger had dinner, but a unique thing was they just opened a McDonald's in Russia, and it was a whole square block. People I can remember were lined up to have a McDonald's hamburger because they had no food, and food and cheese, people were lined up to get meat there.
That's amazing. So that wasn't the end of the story with meat being important to people on that trip.
No, not by a long ways. We actually stayed when we were in Moscow in a dormitory, and we were the only ones in this big dormitory. But we flew from Moscow another
2,000 miles.
2,000 miles into south central Siberia. Abakan was the name. And it was a little unique. We had a little stop along the way. Of course, Bruce and I don't speak Russian. And so they come to get us to get off the plane, but we looked at each other, we ain't getting off this plane here. And but they kind of ushered us off, took us to this little room, and we thought, what the hell? We're going to end up here all by ourselves. But they were actually treating us like VIP, but we didn't know that at the time. But they took us off first, put us back on first. But it was unique when we looked at the runway. We're coming into this place, and there was dozens of wrecked planes. And when they wreck a plane over there, they just doze it off the runway and leave it. And so that was a pretty unique look at their airplanes. And they didn't have any straps, and so your luggage was just in the old military strapping above. So when you hit bumps, it all landed in your lap.
And they landed under power, and before still going 200 miles down the runway, everybody is up and heading for the doorway to be the first one off. Pat and I are sitting there, are we crashing or what? But we made it safely.
Well,
so you get off the plane, and then what happens?
We get to Abakan, and so we stay in this little village, and we took this candy to barter. Well, of course, first thing we run into some little kids, and there went our bartering. We give them the candy, and next thing we looked like the Pied Piper. We must have had 20 little kids following us around the village. Well, that made a pretty big hit with the locals, and the next thing, we get invited to the mayor's house. So the mayor takes us over to his house, but they don't have refrigeration. So what you have is a lot of cheese and salamis and stuff. And so we had that, and so they really treated us well. And they set us up to go hunting in a forest that was 300 miles square without a road.
And what were you hunting for?
We were hunting for stag.
Merle stag?
Merle stag, correct. And what they do, and why it was set up, they actually had a meat market. And we were hunting with their professional hunters, and the animals we were to shoot would come back to the village for an open meat market. But we didn't know that. We thought we were to shoot one Merle stag. And so when we first got into the wilderness, and we stayed in tents, and it was horseback, and we stayed in a trapper's cabin. But so we would pass up on these Merle stags, and our hunters were just kind of scolding us, and we didn't understand till we shot one, and they congratulate us. They take it off, and then they tell us to shoot. Well, then we finally figured it out through an interpreter that we were to help the village. And so then it was a lot more exciting. We got to hunt several stags.
We melted barrels down. We killed a moose, a grizzly bear, black bear, 5 bull elk in just a couple days. To help the village out. If it ran, we killed it. They'd never even seen a scope back in this area, so they used all military. Every third shot was a tracer when that's how they aimed.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they would start shooting, and they could tell where they were hitting by tracer rounds, and that's how they were correct.
Pat, did we drink any vodka with them sitting around the fire? We had eight counting our interpreter.
I can't imagine that you guys drank any vodka while
Pat
you were there.
And I, and I don't know how many cases.
It was called roasting.
We drank cases.
We broasted everything from partners to countries,
white girls
to hunting.
Friendship, world peace, whatever.
Now be careful, Bruce. Be careful.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty special time, honestly. Like, the hunting aside, the fact that you guys were able to go over there before the fall of the Soviet Union and really act as ambassadors in so many ways. And you're representing America for people that maybe had never even seen an American before, probably hadn't.
Well, they hadn't. They hadn't seen scopes on a rifle. They hadn't seen leather boots. They all wore rubber boots in this town. And but you found that hunters or outdoors people, farming communities were all the same. They all treated each other pretty much the same. They were very friendly people. And they really did the utmost to take care of us, treated us exceptionally well. And they had a couple of professional hunters killed by a grizzly bear right before we got there. And then when killed a grizzly bear, they thought we were really something, but they'd never seen the weapons that we had.
Yeah, they're professional hunters, as Pat was saying, were actually just like you and I going to work. They had, I think it's either 6 or 8 professional hunters that went up into the taiga to bring meat back to the village, from moose to deer to elk. And their elk were similar to ours, a little darker, same horns, bugled the same. We're in bugle season, and the bugle teeth were slightly smaller, but basically looked like our elk.
Interesting that their ivories would be smaller. I mean, certainly our elk came over the Bering Land Bridge, and are directly related to those Merrill stags. So any differences between those two populations are fairly recent. That was like 14,000 years ago that stuff was going on. So pretty cool that there's any noticeable difference at all, honestly.
Large-bodied. It would almost be like if you put Rocky Mountain elk horns on a Roosevelt bull.
But the horns looked just like our elk.
Yeah.
I mean, they bugled just the same as our elk.
Did you see some big bulls?
I killed a 7x7 with a couple other 6 points, and Pat killed an 8x6, which was it was really heavy. He has it mounted at his house. Very, very heavy, beautiful, big bull. Since they don't have a season over there, at night or daytime, doesn't matter. It's meat for the village, and about 10 o'clock at night, we're sleeping in the taiga under our horse blankets. Didn't have sleep bags or anything, and we had elk bugling all around us. We had a big, real low roar elk, and they were yelling "Grande, Grande" at 10 o'clock at night. And I had a mag light that they'd never seen, and I threw it up, and 2 eyes there. And Pat says, "I think I can hit that." And went up there the next morning, and there's a bullet hole right between the eyes of an elk. We don't do that around here, but over there it was basically survivable for the village. And so
it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be able to have meat, especially when you're under that type of rule from your government, and everything in your life is so scarce. Like, those people were in a bad way at that time.
Yep. Yeah, it's all took down there fresh, laid right on an open meat market, and the village comes flocking in there to get their meat. That's subsistence for them, and without that, in fishing, and everything is taken fresh and then dried, because they have no refrigeration there at that time.
What are some other memorable hunts that you guys have been on together? I mean, you've been friends for a long time. You've hunted all over the damn place.
Well, we've hunted Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and whatnot. We had a wonderful time a couple of years ago in Australia, back in the Aborigine bush.
I want to hear
hunting.
about Australia because I was supposed to spend a whole month there last year, and they had their borders closed and still do. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I want to hear about it because you guys kind of had the hunt that I wanted to go on.
Yeah, it was actually one of the more enjoyable because we were out in the middle of nowhere, and we ended up killing 5 water buffalo that were real big, and there are just a lot of them out in that area.
Is water buffalo fun to hunt, or are they a big dumb animal, or what's the deal there?
Kind of like a Cape buffalo, wouldn't you think, Pat?
Yeah, they are. They can be aggressive. They wind you like a big animal. They'll bolt. You get close to make a good shot because they can be extremely dangerous. But they're a big, strong animal. They'll weigh 2,000 pounds, 2,400 pounds on a big one.
That's huge. That's bigger than any native land mammal we have in North America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have horns over 100 inches. In the early days, they actually brought in, and they've taken over that bush, but they brought in and they hunted them for meat, and they would actually bring in meat lockers and for the young bulls, and they would slaughter them and take them to meat markets and supply the cities with water buffalo. And even today, they do that somewhat out there, and they have to pay the Aborigines because it's on the native lands to do that. But they are fun to hunt. They're like any big game animal. They're very sensitive to smell. Very enjoyable hunt. And then, of course, there you have to look out for snakes. That's probably the most dangerous place in the world for poisonous snakes.
I don't like that.
Like 8 out of the 9 most poisonous snakes.
7 out of the 9 most poisonous snakes.
Okay, yeah, when we get up in the middle of the night to go outside to relieve ourselves, we always took a flashlight and watch where you're stepping.
Handful of grenades.
Yeah.
They have a lot of kangaroo and we fished. Bruce caught some nice barramundi in the creek.
Barramundi, yeah.
Did they have fewer kangaroos after you left?
No, we didn't shoot a kangaroo. We saw an unbelievable amount of birds. They'd wake us every morning. We're staying along they called it a river, but it was more of a creek or a creek, whichever. We've been there.
What do you say, Pat? Do you say creek or crick?
Crick.
Thank you so much. I am also Team Crick.
Yeah.
Okay, you creek people.
Bruce, you're up here in a brand new jet boat.
Yes. Yeah, we had
Tell me about this boat.
We had a great trip up here. Had 4 or 5 good rapids.
I was sweating bullets before we went through Chittim. I was shitting my pants.
Good old Chittim's only 200 yards from the end of the road, and it sunk a few boats, and a few people turned around and said, we don't want to do this. But that's why you come up here to, it's just like driving down the highway, except we've got water, and we brought our boats up here, and we had them both overloaded. We have a phenomenal camp. There's 6 of us here. Wonderful food, steaks, hamburgers, good cocktails.
Pizza night tonight, Dutch oven pizzas.
Can you believe that? Up here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Frank Church Wilderness area.
And that's one of the things that I love the most about boat camping is a boat is a very efficient way to transport goods and heavy goods. So you can have all kinds of luxuries on a camp like this. And I think a lot of people, when they think camping, especially hunters, they fall into this idea of like freeze-dried, throwing a little bit of peanut butter in a tortilla and taking off. But you can have a pretty nice kitchen and live well out here. And I enjoy that.
Sausage and eggs for breakfast yesterday or this morning. And
we had salmon.
Yeah, salmon.
Hamburgers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
You know, you can pack more on the boats than you can on a horse.
So the law of buoyancy is that the upward force on a body in the water is equal to the weight of the water that object displaces. So if you have a boat that's, 22, 25 feet long, and the beam is 100 some inches wide and it's sinking down into the water, the weight of the amount of water that it's displacing is tremendous. So that's the upward force that the water is pushing on the bottom of the boat. So you can put a heck of a lot of weight in these things. Now, it's better if you don't. They like running light. But I ran pretty heavy on the way up here, and I have 175 fewer horses helping me along than you do, Bruce. But tell me more about this boat. Give me the specs on it. It's a beauty.
Well, we got American flag all over the side of it, so you can tell where I stand there. But it's a 22-foot Rogue Jet with a 575 a Ford Raptor 6.2-liter engine, a Hamilton 241, so it'll pack we had probably over a ton of weight in it besides 80 gallons of fuel, and came up the river like we're in a Ford diesel pickup.
And you were at 3,200 RPMs going 4 or 5 miles an hour faster than me at 35 or 3,600 RPMs. And I have a 400 horsepower GM 6.0. And I have struggled with trying to say how long my boat is, because it says 21 on the side. It's 25 feet long. It has an Outback motor design. It's got a swim deck. I just don't know. I think that the boat thinks it's 25 feet long. The title says 23, and the number on the side of it is 21. So
as long as it packs a load to get up in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it is the last couple days have been absolutely 30 degrees, 28 degrees in the morning, and 65 during the day, and absolutely beautiful.
How does a jet boat work?
Put gas in it, turn the key, and turn gasoline into noise.
No, I mean,
up the river.
Talk me through it. Like, what's the difference between, because most people are familiar with a boat that's driven by a screw or a propeller that's down in the water and it's spinning and, pushing the boat along. So how does a jet boat work? What makes a jet boat a jet boat?
Well, we've done a tremendous amount of designing the hulls to make them more efficient, but Hamilton Jet from New Zealand is really come a long ways in developing how to suck water in and shove it out the back and give you phenomenal propulsion forward.
So there's an intake grate in the bottom of the boat.
In the bottom of the boat, we have, it'll run through up on plane, 8 inches of water. We have nothing hanging below the bottom. A great steering nozzle because of the thrust that it is, and it's able to, we do tremendous amount of law enforcement boats even in lakes because of the safety. Running over a log, you can jump a log, it's not going to hurt anything. Turn around, jump back over it, stick your foot up underneath the boat, nothing's going to bite you or hurt you. So the safety factor, maneuverability of the jets now maneuver better than a prop. So
yep.
It's been a great fun time in the development of them and going the different places that we go doing that.
So the internals of the, what's actually happening. We have a motor that is spinning an impeller. There's a grate in the bottom of the boat, and water is shooting through this grate and getting spun by the impeller and then shot out a nozzle in the back of the boat. And Newton's third law is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the force of the water going out the pump in the back of the boat is equal to the force driving the boat forward. And that's what propels the boat.
Yes, it's they've engineered and made that so much more efficient that it's very close to as efficient as a prop. Even some of your big yachts, a lot of the tenders up in Alaska are using jet drives just because of efficiency and the low maintenance.
That's neat.
Yep, it's pretty neat.
And you've owned 2 jet boat companies?
Yes, Jetcraft Boats and Rogue Jet Boatworks.
And would you say that it's becoming more or less popular right now?
Boating, because of COVID, has become extremely popular. I mean, it's just, you can get away from everybody, get out on the water, fish, recreate with your family. We're about almost a year and a half out in production right now. Of course, these boats are hand-built, so it's extremely labor-intensive for our law enforcement, government boats, and the general public boats. But it's neat to be that far out in production, that the volume of boats that we're trying to build now is pretty great.
Pat, is it neat for you that he's that far out in production?
Well, no. I've had a boat with him for about 3 years. But since I'm a good friend of his, you can tell I'm at the top of his list. So it's only 3 years it's been out. But I think any month now. I don't say week, but it's down to months.
Okay.
I should get it back.
And what's it going to be?
It's a 22-foot with a new Raptor engine in it.
Good things take a long time, Pat. Good things take a long time.
So this is really going to be a good thing. The problem is, I think my kids thinks he sold it on me, and we're waiting for another new one, is what's happening.
You know, I did see a jet boat fitting a similar description get sent down to Argentina recently. So
I heard that rumor. We've made him send a picture, actually, of putting a motor and a jet together, but we didn't know whether he was taking it in or out of that boat.
Bruce had to slow down and wait for me a couple times coming upriver, and I offered to take my boat down there and have him put a 575 horsepower engine in it.
Well, you'll get it in a few years.
Yeah, 3-4 years. 5 years.
Yeah, you might, if you're lucky.
I love you too.
It's a great product if you can get your hands on it.
Well, and that's the truth, right? And we're all willing to wait for, well, not all of us, but I'm willing to wait 12 years for a bottle of scotch to taste right. I think waiting 3 years for a jet boat to be right is within the scope.
Well, between Pat and I, we have 144 years of experience, and we can still hike the mountains. So what a good buddy to come up here with.
Well, and you guys have been down here glassing. How many bears have we seen from camp? 11 bears?
From camp. I mean, in 2 days, day and a half.
Yep. And a herd of sheep this morning of 10 across the river.
Yeah, we saw those sheep on the way in that were so skittish.
Yep.
Got about.
I thought they were going to get in the bow of your boat, or I don't know what you were going to do with those sheep when you got out. Oh, I may not supposed to say that.
They were cute.
I don't know what you were doing.
If they were mule deer, I would have cared more about them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were out there, and but there was a very nice ram amongst that group of ram band.
Yeah. So, they were less than one boat length away from me, regardless of how you measure my boat. So if you think that jet boats bother wildlife, I've got a video to show you, because they just laid back down on the beach.
Yeah, we saw a lot of sheep, ton of elk, a bunch of bear,
a lot of bears,
a lot of deer.
I shot a bear today. Did I bring that up yet?
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Congratulations.
With Sig Sauer cross rifle. That was heart shot at a couple hundred yards.
Yeah, 337.
337.
But so I've got some fleshing to do on that hide, because we're going to be out here a few more days and it's pretty warm. So anticipating getting bears and hopefully wolves on this trip, I brought a bunch of salt with me. So I'm going to flesh that hide out. And Sean Powell, who has been videoing, he guides up in Alaska, and he knows how to turn ears and lips and stuff like that. So he's going to help me with some of those finer details that I don't know about. And we're going to get this thing all salted up and ready to take to the taxidermist and get a soft tan on it. I got a soft tan on a chocolate bear that I killed last year with Ross from Switchback Outdoors. He's out here hunting too, him and Jim O'Leary. They're coming off the mountain right now. Hopefully they get down here in time to have warm pizza.
Yeah, I'll head upriver to pick them up here in about a half an hour before it gets dark, hopefully, and get back down.
I brought that little pack raft with me. I was thinking I'd just drive over there and throw that pack raft out on the beach with a note, Best of luck.
Good luck, buddies.
and a flashlight. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be courteous.
Yeah,
maybe throw a beer in there and give them some courage.
Bruce, how fast will that new boat run?
Coming up the river about 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, because we're working up through the rapids and stuff, but about 55. They're not made for speed, but they're made for packing a load.
A load and maneuverability.
Yeah.
And on looking at the river now, though, that's why I would say we've seen more people on this river, because normally this river is not for novices to run, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, there have been a lot of aluminum left on the rocks, and a few boats sunk, but they were a number of people helping some other people running up and down the river today, which was great to see people out. I mean, we had more people, more camps way down before you got into the wilderness area, of course, and we've had quite a bit of boat traffic today, and it's so great to see people out and enjoying themselves with the COVID going on.
Yeah.
We literally saw $2 million worth of boats come past camp in the span of about 10 minutes yesterday.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did.
It was like a show.
Beautiful.
But the jet boat races are going on down in Riggins, and a buddy of yours, or at least an acquaintance, is running a boat, and he's got a good chance of winning it. It's going on today, and that jet boat is going 114 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's really scary on a river up through rapids. Of course, they're backing off in the rapids, but that's pretty amazing to make everything that efficient to be able to go on water that fast, especially on a river.
So some of these rapids that are kind of rolling waves, they want to bridge those. So they want to come off the top of one and hit the top of the next one. But if they get that wrong and they hit that next wave, they'll submarine, and their boat is still pumping, and it will just keep pumping them straight down under the water. They can have some real issues if that happens.
Yeah, hopefully they didn't sink any today, and they'll be running tomorrow. Tim Harding, the gentleman we're talking about, is from Gold Beach. He's been very innovative on developing the nozzles and the steering and everything to help make the boats go fast. They're all tunnel hulls, and they just do phenomenal. They're very, very fun watching them come up the river, echoing through the canyon.
They have wings on the front of the boat to keep the nose down in the water.
Yes. Going so fast, they don't want to have a blowover where catch some wind and flip them over backwards, and it helps keep them stabilized.
It's crazy. My boat is a Riddle, and it's a terrific boat. I love my boat. It's the love of my life, and I tell my girlfriend and anybody who will listen that that's the case. But they built a boat for one of the James Bond movies that they did a bunch of stunts with.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, pretty cool. And then, my granddad, who grew up down there in Hell's Canyon, not too far from where we recorded this podcast a year ago, he bought a boat from Norm Riddle in 1958, and it was one of the first welded aluminum boats that was ever built. And it's amazing to me that the whole design hasn't changed that much in that time.
Yeah, we've made a lot of innovations, but basically the things are similar.
People have been getting around in boats for thousands of years. We've been working on this as a species for a very long time. But these things that you're doing now that seem small are making a really big difference.
Yeah, cosmetically we're making the boats where it's more of a family boat now. It used to be just the kind of the guys 4-wheel drive for going out and fishing, but now we're making them for skiing, family camping, hunting, fishing, all the things to make it an all-around boat.
Mm-hmm. They're a lot quieter than they used to be. I had some clients, some of the worst fishing clients I ever had, and I hope that they're listening to this podcast right now so that they can finally know what I really think about them. I'm not actually going to fully disclose that, but there are 3 professors from Berkeley, California, from UC Berkeley, and they'd booked this kokanee fishing trip with me, and they showed up there at the dock, and they got down to the boat and they kind of looked at it, and one guy tilted his head back and forth, and he goes, "Well, I didn't know this was a jet boat. I'm not going to get on this thing. It's too loud." I said, "All right, sir, that's fine. I've got your deposit, and I'm going to go ahead and hold on to that, but I understand." And he, started to stomp back up the dock in a really dramatic way, and I dropped an electric trolling motor in the water and silently went off at 1.1 miles an hour for the rest of the day. Oh, and the other 2 guys, they were pretty bad humans and had real high opinions of themselves and pretty low opinions of everybody else. We caught some fish and parted ways, and that was that. But can't win them all.
No.
Pat, how do you feel about mule deer?
Oh, that's a real passion of my life in hunting, and that's hunting and fishing is my true hobby, and hunting is probably the most. And I really enjoy sheep hunting and mule deer hunting, and I grew up mule deer hunting, and mule deer hunting is truly my passion.
So what's the relationship like between caring about mule deer conservation, and mule deer hunting?
I think it needs to be taught, and the problem is there has been, from the beginning, there has been a big change in the original of mule deer hunting and taking advantage of that species to a changeover of mule deer conservation today. And there needs to be a lot of education involved, and it's a species of any and all of the species that is in real dire straits.
What was your role with the Mule Deer Foundation?
I was the chairman of the board of the National Mule Deer Foundation, and also the CEO of the Mule Deer Foundation for a couple years. And I hired just the past president, Miles Moretti, the CEO of the Mule Deer Foundation, that just now retired, and we have a new Mule Deer CEO, and it has come a long ways in the last 10 years to a prominent national conservation organization. And we have grown leaps and bounds in chapters to over 100 chapters now throughout the U.S. And it is a tremendous conservation group, but it needs help. It's mule deer, blacktail, and their habitat and conservation. And we have a big push now in our endowment, because I truly believe that is the future of all conservation groups, is the sheep and the elk and the turkey, is through their endowment programs that they will live on in the future, because they will be able to fund projects for youth and conservation for our youth.
So are those endowments, donations from wealthy people that can give you hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, or are they smaller amounts? How does that work?
It can work both ways, and the word needs to get out. It could work from corporations, insurance policies, wealthy individuals, or just a small $5 and $10 group. And I think, unfortunately, I do not think we, as Mule Deer has done a good job in getting that type of word out. I think the sheep and the Rocky Mountain elk have done an excellent job of promoting the endowment. I do not believe the Mule Deer Foundation has done such a good job. But any dollar, from $1 to the millions, and but it is a 501c3 corporation, so it's all tax deductible. So if you look at major colleges, for example, what drives a huge college, a USC, a Notre Dame, Oregon Ducks, is the alumni. From the alumni is the endowment programs. And I really believe in the future is the endowment programs.
When you talk about the need to educate the public about mule deer, what is it that they don't understand?
I think they don't understand now where we used to believe. You used to believe if you got a tag, you needed to shoot a deer because that was your right because you had a tag. You need to educate now that if it is a buck, a young buck, it's all right to let that buck go and grow up, because the decline in the mule deer, we're no longer a subsistence-driven population as we were 50 years ago. You don't necessarily need it. Now, if you do need the animal and you do buy a tag, there is nothing wrong to shooting a mule deer. But we need to promote the theory, it's nothing wrong with letting that deer go and eating a tag. Believe me, a little mayonnaise on a tag does not hurt it that bad when you eat it.
Yeah. I agree with you. Can a forked horn mule deer buck, a 1.5-year-old buck, is he sexually mature? Can he breed does?
He will certainly try to breed does. Absolutely, he will. And particularly if there's no older bucks around, he will definitely try to breed does.
Okay. So the harvest of bucks, since one buck can cover a lot of does, is it true that if you harvest a lot of bucks that you're going to end up having some does that don't get bred as a product of that, and it will hurt the population?
Absolutely. And there is such a thing as dry does, and there's does that do not get bred, and there is a direct relationship to the number of bucks and doe relation. You can have the animals will, unfortunately, eat theirself out of habitat, and it is a management process. There is nothing wrong to shooting a mature doe. And if it is done correctly with the right personnel, there is nothing wrong with bringing up, whether it is a youth, a woman, a man, to shoot a doe is a trophy in the eyes of the beholder, and it is good management tool.
Yeah, and we talked about it last night. But if you shoot an old doe, and I don't care whether it's an old mule deer doe or an old whitetail doe, that is substantially harder than shooting a mature buck of either species, in my opinion. Those older does are super smart.
Yeah, they didn't get to be an older doe by being stupid. They're extremely wise.
You look at some of these bears, these bigger bears, they're 15 to 20 years old.
Correct.
They know how to survive. We don't see that in other species very often.
You watch what leads a group. Generally, a herd of elk is a lead cow. A group of does is a lead doe. What gets a deer killed in the rut is because he's stupid to buck. But you watch the does. The does will lead him off in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's the truth of it. And, I got a terrific whitetail buck last year in Nebraska. And the way I was able to get that buck was by basically hunting the doe that buck was chasing.
Correct.
Yeah. So She was the Eve to his Adam.
Yeah, his demise.
Oh, not to get too Old Testament on us here, but no, I think mule deer are great. I think it's kind of a shame that they're called mule deer. Honestly, that's not the sexiest name that they could have been given, and it almost makes them seem cartoonish. But they are a truly magnificent animal, and the places that mule deer live are awesome. They're sort of like rainbow trout in that regard. Like you are hard pressed to catch a rainbow trout in an ugly place, and it's the same with mule deer. And if a mule deer lives there in its natural mule deer habitat, it's a wonderful place to be.
Correct. They live from the highest mountains to the deserts. And the deserts are truly beautiful. If you look at desert, there's all kinds of animals on a desert. But in the mountains, there's mountain mule deer, and that's why they call them desert mule deer. They live from the sea to the top of the mountains.
And they look very different.
Absolutely.
Very, very
Absolutely.
different. There's 19 subspecies of coyote in North America, and it's separated by region. And I think that we could do that with mule deer too, and we kind of haven't. But if you take a buck from one of these wilderness areas in northeast Oregon or even here in central Idaho, and you compare that with a deer down in the southwest, out there in the flats in Arizona, they might as well be different species, certainly different subspecies. And that's something that we need to look at and start understanding these critters a lot better. I think predation has a huge role in the decline of the mule deer population, which, as far as I can tell from reading, has been occurring since 1959.
Yes, it has. It really has. And unfortunately, I don't want to get on the subject on certain game divisions, but when you devote your income from tag sales versus a biology standpoint, you're going to run into trouble on any game species.
Always. That's part of the North American model, though. How do we get around that?
There got to be some other avenue of income diverted to that, whether it be that product, whether it's fisheries or game, other than the tag sales.
So I was on a board a couple years ago to develop new sources of revenue for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I drove to Salem once or twice a month for close to a year and went to the Capitol and, sat in one of the rooms and talked about it. And they had, people representing, as many different aspects as they could. I represented Eastern Oregon. So everything east of the Cascades was on my shoulders. And within that, I tried to represent timber and agriculture and hunters, and I did the best I could. But we looked hard at as many different places to get money as we could. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife is not the only department within the state of Oregon and in many states that wants more money. Like, they all want more money, and they're all looking for more money. So anytime that we looked under a rock, somebody else had already looked under that rock. And we went to all kinds of conservation groups. We went to, Nike, and we went to Columbia, and, we're looking at trying to take some of the money from the sale of every puffy jacket to try and fund conservation. And all these groups are willing to talk about conservation, but none of them are willing to part with any money for it. So it is really, really tough. One of the other challenges that came up with that is that right now, since hunters and shooters fund conservation, they have the strongest voice in how that conservation actually occurs. And there was some resistance to giving that up and allowing another group to give money to that, because they're afraid that if a non-hunting group was now contributing to conservation, that would decrease hunting opportunity. And I didn't really see that fear realized. I do think that we need more money, And looking at the budgets and the details of it, it was abundantly clear that they needed more money to perform their tasks. This year to date, as of last week anyhow, hunting and fishing license sales in Oregon are up 32%. So they've got a lot of extra money this year. Are we going to see extra conservation efforts? We'll see.
I think that's a point. It's almost like a general fund. You raise that extra money, are you going to see that diverted to where it needs to go? You need to have a clause, or you need to have, if you raise the money, it goes to this. And if you can't put something into that, then how do you direct that amount of money or the money raised to that particular project? And until you do that, it's almost like a checkoff. If Oregon had a checkoff on their taxes that you could deduct from your state taxes and said this amount of money went to this conservation project or this group or this to do this, that would help the state or help the wildlife budget, and you could deduct it off your taxes, you can bet there would be thousands of dollars rolling in. But the state is afraid they're going to check that off and they're not going to get their hands on their money.
Right. Yep. I mean, the lottery funds a tremendous amount of conservation. And if you talk to state officials, they'll badmouth lottery, they'll badmouth tobacco and alcohol, but the taxes that come from those things help so much. It's terrific. And license sales are great because it gets matched with Pittman Robertson Fund, which is
Pittman Robertson Fund, yeah. Correct.
Yeah, it's awesome. And that comes from shooters and gun sales and ammunition, all that good stuff. So right now you want to talk about anti-gun this or high-capacity magazine that. It's like, well, if you do that, if you limit gun and ammunition sales, you are directly impacting our ability to fund conservation in this country.
Correct.
And nobody else is willing to step up. No,
because right now, they're all afraid. Everybody now is afraid of the cancer culture.
Yeah.
You get canceled out.
Yeah.
If you're not very established, everybody's ducking.
Yeah. And it's a real fear. I'm afraid of that. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't.
Anybody that's out there in the public eye now had better be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, until it blows over, everybody's a target that way that derives their income from the public view. You're in jeopardy.
And some of it is just trends on what people are mad about right now. But some of it, people get mad about something and they go, wait, did you do this 30 years ago? Did you do this 60 years ago? Did somebody do this 80 years ago and they're already dead? We're going to cancel them anyways? That's nuts. That shows zero appreciation for how we evolve as a society. And man, I just have no support for that whatsoever. It's an affront to history. And if you can't appreciate and understand history, you are doomed to repeat it.
That is correct. And if you don't learn from history, the whole idea of history is to learn from history. The greatest civilizations in the world imploded. They didn't get taken from the outside, they imploded.
Yep.
And you learn from history. And so every culture has a bad history here and there throughout the time. So you should learn from that.
Those are mistakes
that were made.
And even if it was intentional at the time, it was the wrong thing. But we have to learn from that. And we have to remember that we did those things wrong. And there has to be a record of doing those things wrong. If we abolish the record, then it's going to happen again really quickly.
Correct. Really quickly. And so somebody abolishes this record, it will be dug up 50 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all that, it's really on the outside world. Because right now, we're sitting on this lovely bench along the River of No Return. This is one of my favorite rivers in the world. And I've never been on this section before. I feel so grateful to be able to come up here with Bruce, get to follow one of the real jet boat masters of the world and learn how to run it from him. There's a rock house dug into the ground over here. There's another rock house dug into the ground up on the hillside I found earlier today. We're seeing all this wildlife. Like, this is sure enough wilderness that you can access with this very modern jet boat technology. And I love it. I feel so privileged to be able to be a part of it. And, your relationship with Bruce, you guys have hunted forever together all over the world. It's fascinating. I love it. And you guys have been pretty polite on this podcast, but I also really appreciate the shit talking that goes on between the two of you. Bruce got pulled away to help some of our guys that are up on the hill right now. But Pat, I just want to thank you very much for all the effort that you put into the Mule Deer Foundation and into other conservation efforts. And I want to thank you for your time here on the podcast this evening.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I need to go light some charcoal and start getting some cast iron.
I can't wait for the pizza. Thank you kindly.
All righty, sir. Thank you so much.
I live in an old cabin with bad to non-existent insulation and wood heat. That cabin can see snow every month of the year and needs a good amount of firewood stacked in the woodshed to carry through the colder months. This spring, as my woodpile turned to smoke and ash, I noticed something metal pushing out of the decades of sawdust and bark. I kicked at it and unearthed a Stanley thermos. The cup was missing, and it showed more worn stainless steel than green. There were dents in the metal, and the handle looked like a puppy had chewed on it, but it still hadn't leaked the old coffee I could feel slosh inside. It took me back to memories of cutting firewood with my dad, waking up early for an elk hunt, or going out to the canyons to gather cattle. A Stanley thermos has the durability to survive whatever hard work you throw at it. You may find it carries memories as well as coffee. Learn more about their new and classic line of products at stanley1913.com or at your local sporting goods store. And catch you next week. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share the show with a friend. You can also rate the podcast and leave a review. Your support allows me to keep doing what I love, which is meeting incredible folks and sharing their stories with you. For more content and photos, follow the show on Instagram at Six Ranch Podcast or me at Six Ranch Outfitters. This episode was produced by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the Six Ranch Podcast was created by John Chatelain and digitized by Celia Christofferson. Tune in every Monday for a brand new episode of the Six Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.